long enough to deter the attentions of the early 19th century resurrection men who supplied the Edinburgh Medical College with corpses for dissection.
That was one of the things that would later become something that was associated with vampirism. That's what I was talking about, the cages that they would put over.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
It's like sometimes people would put those over people that they had suspected were vampires if they didn't have the heart to put a stake through them.
So it wasn't just to keep people out, but it was to keep the dead in.
Right.
That's so fun.
Yeah.
The most famous spirit by far haunting the cemetery is that of George Mackenzie.
Yep.
A lot of times they call him the Mackenzie poltergeist, who is said to be the most aggressive and active paranormal figure in Greyfriars. George Mackenzie was a lawyer and the Lord Advocate during the rule of Charles II, and he had quickly earned himself the reputation as being one of the most vicious prosecutors of the Covenanters, the people who rose up and signed the National Covenant in 1638. Mackenzie's brutal and unfeeling treatment of the protesters even earned him the moniker Bloody Mackenzie.
Yep.
Many Covenanters were imprisoned in a section of Greyfriars Kirkyard in Edinburgh called the Covenanters' Prison, which we will talk about a little bit more. But he did delight in their torture, and guards were allowed to beat the Covenanters at will. Eventually, all of their heads would decorate the spiked gate.
Obviously. You always need a little bit of decoration, though.
It's just a little bit of pizzazz.
What's a spike without a head?
I feel like people in the town walked by and they said, "Oh my God, did you get that on Wayfair, or is that Overstock?"
Oh, no.
After his death, Mackenzie was entombed in a mausoleum in Greyfriars Kirkyard, which has been the site of a number of desecrations. And in the late 90s, a homeless man sought shelter from a really nasty storm. And he decided that he was going to take up shelter in Mackenzie's mausoleum.
Right, because there was an entranceway, right? Like, not an intentional entranceway, but he could get into it more easily than other...
He wasn't able to get in through the front doors, but he peeked through and saw that there was a hole in the back.
Right.
And it was just big enough for him to shimmy his way through and pull his belongings in with him.
Right.
So once inside, he found, of course, Mackenzie's coffin and some coffins belonging to Mackenzie's relatives. That one's up for debate. I don't know exactly whether or not there were relatives in there with him. But he supposedly had broken into one of the coffins out of boredom and morbid curiosity. And then suddenly, the floor beneath him gave way and he fell into a pit. The space beneath the mausoleum had actually contained bodies as well because they were plague victims that had been dumped down there and covered as a means of quick disposal.
See, and I had read that he was intentionally trying to fish one of the pieces of jewelry off of the corpse.
I've actually heard that version of the story as well.
And then that's when he fell through the floor, is when he had grabbed... Yeah. I want to say it was a coin, right?
I heard that he was just looking for something valuable to take with him.
And then that's when he fell through the floor into the abyss.
I mean, it wasn't a great time.
Wasn't the best of times?
It was the worst of times. And actually, the hole where the man fell through is a grate in the floor, and it can still be seen today if you pop your head in and take a quick little look-see-poo.
A little peek-see-poo.
A little peek-see-poo. After the disruption, people reported poltergeist activity around the tomb, including scratches and bruises, all attributed to Mackenzie's poltergeist.
Right, but scratches and bruises on their personal selves, especially the people that were, let's say, negging.
Yeah, well,
what I've heard as well, is the people that would go in there as non-believers and be like, yeah, prove it.
It's especially non-believers are oftentimes the ones that get attacked the most. And it's more than just scratches and bruises. Lots of weird things happen to people. It's one of the most well-documented phenomenon. This activity, however, and this is so messed up, did not scare a duo of teens who decided that they were going to break into the tomb in 2004.
Like you do.
They removed a number of unidentified remains. They even beheaded one of the corpses, using the skull as a kind of hand puppet.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's the best thing to do.
But they were found and tried.
Of course.
Under a centuries-old grave robbing law described as violation of sepulcher.
Good.
I mean, yeah, that's so gross.
I mean, if you're going to use...
Right,
but if you're going to use an old law that's super outdated, yes, absolutely use one that you can put them into a place.
Yeah, right. Thanks to the many violations, the doors to the mausoleum remain locked and it is sealed off, but visitors can still peek their heads in and see through the windows that are on the doors.
Right.
So according to legend, Mackenzie's spirit was released when the homeless man broke into the resting place. His resting place, by the way, is also called the Black Mausoleum, which I thought was really fun. And this actually was a fate predicted by the famous Scottish poet Robert Louis Stevenson, who referenced Mackenzie in his 1879 book, Edinburgh Picturesque Notes, writing, quote, "When a man's soul is certainly in hell, his body will scarce lie quiet in a tomb, however costly. Some time or other the door must open, and the reprobate come forth in the abhorrent garments of the grave." So, like I said, Mackenzie apparently is really fond of scratching and pushing visitors, especially at night, especially on the ghost tours that go through the cemetery.
Right.
And especially with lots of people around to witness.
Right. He doesn't do anything half-assed, not in life, not in death.
No, we do it up real big. I mean, he's moved on from Overstock.com, baby. Like, we're not even talking Pottery Barn. He's going straight Z Gallery now.
I was thinking that maybe he owns a piece of Amazon.
Quote, "There have been hundreds of incidents," admits volunteer guide Willie Telford. What a fun name. Quote, "People have been bitten, scratched, kicked, pushed, and they often get burn marks or they feel sick, and sometimes they just feel like they're really cold, and it's always George Mackenzie."
I wonder where the burn comes from.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that.
I don't think I've heard that particular version. I've heard the kicks and the bites and the scratch and all that.
I've heard the burn thing. The other really weird thing was that there was a woman who went in there. She had felt that something grabbed her leg, and especially on her ankle.
Yes.
And it got really cold. And then after she left, she said that sometimes that spot where she got grabbed still gets cold. And when she goes out to the beach and she tans, that's the only part of her leg that won't tan.
Oh, that's really fun.
Isn't that crazy?
It's so fun. I've never heard that part. It's so fun. Oh, which might also account for why people get burned sometimes?
Yeah, I saw one where there was a guy that, I don't know if he was a paranormal researcher, but his home had started on fire shortly afterward, and the fire department could not figure out what the cause of the fire was. It was inconclusive. The Covenanters prison is connected to Greyfriars Kirkyard by a stone gateway and locked metal grate near Mackenzie's mausoleum. It was once home to an estimated 1,200 unfortunate members of a failed anti-government revolution in 1679. Conditions at the prison were so brutal that only 257 of the prisoners came out of it alive after their mass incarceration.
It's awful.
It's terrible. They were treated so bad.
Yeah, no kidding.
The prisoners spent over 4 months outside in the graveyard awaiting their trial. They had no shelter. They were given daily food allowances of just 4 ounces of bread.
Oh, I mean, that's fine.
In the end, many prisoners were executed. Hundreds died because of the maltreatment.
Yeah, no kidding.
And I checked out some videos of mediums who had visited, and there was this one really cool guy, Brian Boyle. He was so lovely. I just want to listen to Scottish people talk all day.
I agree with that. I like that very much.
Oh, okay. So one of the things that I thought was so great was he's sitting there and he's talking to the cameraman, and he's like, "Okay, there's this girl Elizabeth that's coming through." He's like, "What's your last name?" You know, and he's like sitting there trying to pick up the messages. He said, "Smart, Elizabeth Smart," and then he starts laughing and he's like, "Oh, I'm so stupid. She's telling me her name's Elizabeth and she is smart."
He's like, "And I am not."
And then he starts laughing. So I was like, at least he has a sense of humor.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you can't nod if you're into this, and if you don't have a sense of humor, you're probably not a great person.
Yeah. Another spirit had told him to lower his voice because it was disrespectful.
Oh,
he was being
so
rude.
Funny. That's so funny. That's me.
There also was a man who he described as a gatekeeper, and he went by Jock.
All cemeteries have one.
Mm-hmm. And he talked about that too. He said, "I know that gatekeepers show up pretty regularly as figures that take care of cemeteries, but this is an actual person that was alive at one point, and he is a gatekeeper in life as well. Like, that was his job." Mm-hmm. And then he starts talking about how this guy, Jock, this gatekeeper, was telling him that he was really unhappy about black magic having been done in the cemetery. After the fact, they did dig up some history on this individual. There was a gentleman named Sergeant John Levick. Men with the name John are often called Jock in Scotland. I did not know that. The man was the gatekeeper and drill master at the nearby Harriet School in 1863. Oh. Isn't that fun?
You fancy, friend.
There also was an EVP recording while video is being shot where Brian asks the spirit about a name that's coming through. And he says, is it Edward or Edwards? Trying to decide if it's a first name or a last name.
Right.
And then he stops and he looks at the camera and he says, no, I'm sure that it's Edward. It's Edward. And that exact moment on the camera, they caught an EVP. And when you play it back and listen to it, it says Edward.
Oh, that's really funny. He's like, no, for real, but I know you cannot pronounce my damn name.
I thought it was really cool because I was like, I feel like that's a really cool way to validate this gentleman's ability.
Yeah, it's really neat.
I really want Brian Boyle to be legit.
Would you say he might be too legit to quit?
Yeah, he can't quit now. He's on a roll, baby girl. Can't stop, won't stop.
Oh, my God.
So according to this medium, most of the spirits there actually welcome visitors and they enjoy them coming into the cemetery. Just probably not Mackenzie. He's a bit of a dick nugget.
Yeah, he's life and death. Hey.
He also did say as they were on their way out that he was getting a lot of mental images of grave robbers, which makes sense. We know that was a big part of the history.
Well, not only that, but also let's take into account that if you can look at all the graves around his particular mausoleum, if you can get into the mausoleum, it probably holds more money because clearly it's more expensive to be interred there.
Yeah. Fun fact. Unpleasant happenings at Greyfriars are so common that organizers of tours even have taken to offering a full refund to visitors who become too spooked and have to leave or end the tour quickly.
I feel like that could be a publicity stunt, but I truly hate the fact that people would knowingly go on a tour, whether or not they believe in it. If they were to have an experience and get too spooked, I feel like that's user error, really, is what that is.
I could see that, yeah.
I feel like it's no one's fault. It's your fault. You did this.
I don't know, though. I mean, that could also depend, too, I guess, on what their definition of too spooked is. If it's one of the people that just randomly goes unconscious, which happens a lot.
Yeah.
Even actually, I heard that there are a lot of people who that happens to them before they even go into the cemetery. They'll be outside of the cemetery heading in, and they'll either get really nauseous or sometimes they pass out. A lot of people have said that they didn't realize that they had passed out until they were being carried to a taxi or away from the cemetery by people in their party.
So it's like haunted house rules.
Yeah. Except, like I said, I think it's interesting that it's happened to people outside of the cemetery.
Yeah, because there's a cafe directly across from the cemetery as well.
That's the one where J.K. Rowling started writing Harry Potter.
Yes.
Which she also, by the way, did you know that she took some of the names of the characters from the gravestones inside of the cemetery?
Yes.
Like Thomas Riddle?
Yes, that's 100, and I gotta be really honest, that's 110%. The ghosting, yes, I would like to visit to see if I had an experience, but honestly, I kind of just want to go for that.
Well, and also because the Harriet School is right there, too. That's part of where she came up with the whole concept to make it be about a school. So I think that's real nifty.
I know.
Yeah.
And I want to go to that cafe and pretend I'm the person.
Now her handprints are in the ground outside of it, so you can go and put your hands in J.K. Rowling's hands.
That's pretty rad.
I mean, I'm so down.
All right, so I'm going to quit this. Someone pay me lots of money to just go there.
Recording live from a graveyard. It's us. A lot of people who have been on the tours have emerged with scratches, but people have also collapsed and people have emerged from the cemetery with broken fingers.
Oh.
And some people after the fact claim that members of their family have gone mad after visiting the churchyard.
Well, I could kind of see that too. It's like your brain works in a really strange way, and sometimes people cannot cope with particulars.
Yeah, I'm not so into that.
No, I'm not into it. I'm just saying I can see where that could possibly happen.
It doesn't sound like an ideal situation for me. I'd rather go to brunch.
I would just rather have a Bloody Mary.
Yeah, that's a meal.
It is.
Bloody Mary bar. Yes, I want to go to one really bad.
They're everywhere.
Recording live from a Bloody Mary bar. It's us.
And now we're hammered and everyone's staring at us because we're in Boys Town and they have them everywhere. And everyone's like, why are you recording this?
Well, let's be honest, honey. They would be staring at us because we took all the cheese. So in 2000, Edinburgh psychic and spiritualist medium Colin Grant attempted an exorcism in the churchyard, as you do.
Maybe don't do that.
He said he was picking up on evil forces and he refused to enter the graveyard without a Bible and a cross. Grant told his family the churchyard was home to 200 unhappy spirits, believed to be the Covenanters who had been held there and starved to death. He said that there was more to be done at Greyfriars, but 2 months later, the 66-year-old psychic died suddenly of a massive heart attack.
Which I could see how that maybe could happen.
You're 66. It's not like you're 21 dying of a massive heart attack.
Right, exactly.
Not to sound like a moldy butthole about that whole situation, but you know...
It's a real classy way to put that.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want to be a butthole about it, but honey...